Ryan Garcia plans to expose Tank Davis through helping Frank Martin. Can he possibly do it? Does Ryan Garcia know enough? Did he find out enough in those 6 rounds against Tank Davis to give Frank Martin a solid game plan on how to beat Tank? That's the question we're going to be discussing today in this video. You guys know that I'm a big Tank fan. I'm a big fan of Ryan Garcia, what he does inside and outside of the ring. I'm not saying he's the best fighter in the world. I'm not saying he's the slickest boxer in the world. I don't think that he's the elite of the elite when it comes to 35 and 140, but I do think that to an extent he's a great talent. You don't just get to where he is by being entertaining, by being, people say that he only got there because of his looks. You don't get to that point in the sport of boxing, just with your looks alone. He has talent. There's no doubt about that. Is he using it to the best of his ability? Is he, doing his best to improve and show that he can hang with the elites? Maybe not. Maybe there is a lot of attention that he is paying in different areas, especially right now, to the point where people are saying, he's wasting his talent. But ultimately, there is talent there. You can't get to where Ryan Garcia is. You don't make $20 million being a bum. You can't do it. There are a lot of good-looking people in the world. How come they're not making money in the sport of boxing? Not making 20+ million, not doing 1.2 million pay-per-view buys alongside Tank Davis. You have to have something. And Ryan Garcia definitely has the talent. It's a matter of him, reaching in that toolbox and being able to pull off wins against credible opponents. That's ultimately what it comes down to. I have no doubt that Ryan Garcia has the punching power. He has the speed, the hand speed. He lacks, things like foot movement, the head movement, and certain fundamentals. And there's no doubt about that. People always talk about when he throws the jab. He's been on Instagram a lot, flashing his speed, and people like to become boxing trainers and keep your hands up, which is obviously true. He should be keeping his hands up. But you look at 90% of these fighters, a lot of them don't train that way. If they're working on speed, you don't see them keeping the fundamentals. Some do, and that's why they're elite. But ultimately, Ryan Garcia is still a very talented and has a lot of potential. He's a talented fighter. He's a talented kid. He's young, and I think that against Devin Haney, it's not. I've said it before. It's not the best stylistic matchup for him, but it's still a great fight. But in terms of Tank getting information, for Frank, getting information for Frank Martin. From Ryan Garcia, I don't know if it's the best take, just because we know that Ryan Garcia wasn't able to win, but I guess he could describe the power and what he saw inside that ring. But you have to remember, Frank Martin also sparred Tank on his own a few years back, but obviously that's sparring, and we like to talk about sparring nowadays, so take what you will from that. But I think Frank Martin's a great fighter in himself. I think that he's going to be able to handle his own business. I don't know if he needs Ryan Garcia's help, because ultimately Ryan didn't beat him. He didn't solve the code. He didn't crack the code. He might have seen something that he can add to, Frank's knowledge and make him aware of, make him see something that maybe Frank Martin doesn't see, preparing for that fight. But ultimately, it's up to Frank. I always say that. Everyone says Tank's downloading information in the first few rounds. I agree, but ultimately he's giving those rounds to you. It's your job to bag those early rounds. That's a given. But it's also your job through those mid to later rounds to not let him get back into the fight. When you give him a little inch, he's going to take a mile. That's what Tank ultimately does. And Frank Martin, this is going to be his most credible opponent. This is going to be Tank's most credible opponent as well. It's going to be Tank's biggest test, and I'll tell you why. Because up to this point, we've seen styles that favor Tank incredibly. When you think about Rolly Romero, you think about guys like Hector Luis Garcia, you look at Ryan Garcia, you look at Leo Santa Cruz, Mario Barrios, all solid fighters, ultimately, all solid fighters, but they come forward. All of these guys come forward. Frank Martin, as good as he is, and he is a come forward fighter as well, he can fight on the back foot, and he's shown that, in multiple fights. And I think this is a style where we'll ultimately be able to see who Tank really is. Do I think Tank beats him? Yeah, I think Tank beats Frank Martin, honestly. But would I be super shocked if Frank can pull it off? No. This is the one opponent where I'd be like, okay, this could be that young guy. Not that he's young, but this could be that young buck, the guy who doesn't have the most experience in the world, who's not the most seasoned fighter in the world, but he's ready to take that shot against Tank, and it's a big payday for him. But I hope that he looks at it as more than that. I hope that he goes into this fight saying, I can beat this guy. I know what he is. I've seen him in sparring. I've been in the ring with him before. I know that power is real, but my game plan is going to be different, and I'm going to have a better outing than anybody else has ever had against this guy, against Tank. Against Tank, he's a great fighter. You know, you have to respect his ability in the ring if you're Frank Martin. I expect him to do that, but you can't let him get back into the fight, because once you allow Tank to get back into that fight, the momentum is his. You know, you already know the crowd is on his side. They want to see a knockout. They come to see Tank because they know that he's going to put on a great performance. They know that he's probably going to do whatever it takes to get you out of there. So what do you do with that information if you're Frank Martin? Are you going to crack? Are you going to shell up? Are you going to let Tank dictate the pace? It's easier said than done, but ultimately, we've seen this show before. We've seen Tank go in there, give guys rounds while he does download data, he does download information, and he adjusts, he sets traps for the mid to late rounds. So in the mid to late rounds, when you think that you have 3-4 rounds back, you got to ignore that. Act like you have zero. Act like you have zero and make it a boring fight if you have to. I always say win by any means necessary when you're in the position of the underdog. If you're an underdog, you demand respect. You're not going to beat the A side fighting a decent fight. You can't. You can't. If the fight is even close between you and Frank Martin and your Tank, Tank's going to get that decision. Trust me. So Frank Martin's in a very difficult position where he has to make this win look convincing, or else, you know, Tank's going to take over. Tank's going to win if you don't really put a beating on Tank and you don't make it convincing. You don't send a message to the judges in the sport of boxing. You don't send shockwaves through the sport. Like, people aren't going to defend you. You have to do something significant in this fight if you're Frank Martin. I know it sounds dramatic. I know it sounds like this and that, but that's ultimately, if you want to be the guy, and I think Frank Martin is the most talented fighter that Tank is going to face. It's going to be the most difficult stylistic fight for him. He's going to have to shut that door. When round 5, round 6, round 7 come, that's when you take away Tank's, all of his confidence. That's when you take it all away. When he thinks that he's going to get back into the fight and you shut that door and you leave it to the championship rounds and you slug it out, make it a boring fight and win by any means necessary, that's what Frank Martin ultimately has to do. You know, it's not about what Ryan Garcia says. You know, you can take what he says and use it as your, and, you know, take it with a grain of salt and use it in your own way. You know, use it to create your own strategy. Go in there, be patient, be smart, swim without getting wet, do your thing, and, you know, work on your, like, everything you worked on in the gym. It all comes down to that one night. And I think Frank Martin, he has to be very smart in there. I always say tie Tank up, tie him up if you have to. When you're in that pocket, you know, rough it, you know, make it rough. Don't make it a clean fight, because in a clean fight, Tank is going to be the one to make it physical. And if you allow that, then he's going to get comfortable. Be physical with Tank, make it a rough and tough fight, a rugged fight, make it boring if it has to be boring, win by any means necessary. That's what Frank Martin ultimately has to do. Does he do it? I still think Tank has too much power within those later rounds that it overcomes Frank Martin, but ultimately that's the game plan I see for Frank Martin. He has to be smart. He has to, you know, be cautious, not get overconfident, don't overcommit. And if you do that, your defense is tight, you know, you have a shot. But if not, it's Tank's fight all day. He's going to stop him. If not, if he can't be perfect, if he can't, you know, fight a clean fight, you know, Tank's going to get the better of him. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Frank Martin, kind of, you know, with Ryan Garcia, getting some information from him, potentially on how to beat Tank, because Ryan wasn't able to do it. Maybe he can, you know, give Frank Martin the information it takes to beat a guy like Tank Davis. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace. That's going to do it for another Nads Fight Media video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Matt Nabong, with another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all. Thank you guys for the constant support. Salute to y'all always. It's been your boy.